Welcome into the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is episode 12. It's the quarterback corner, Brian.
Excited.
Yeah. So as our host as always, we got myself, the Monotone Master, and Brian, the Fantasy Foreseer today. You can find us on social media. Our TikTok and Instagram is Why You're Wrong FFB, and you can find us on Twitter at You're Wrong FFB. But today's episode, we're reviewing the guys who are projected to be the top 10 quarterbacks for 2020, discussing who actually finished in the top 10, and then looking at who will be the top 10 guys for 2021 going ahead. So impactful news so far. This is a pre-recorded episode, so we got nothing to speculate on at the moment because we can't see into the future. So, Brian, the top 10 guys going into 2020. Remember when everyone wanted Lamar Jackson?
Of course.
Overall, 21. Patrick Mahomes at 19. Dak Prescott, 48. Deshaun Watson at 59. Russell Wilson, 52. Kyler Murray, 57. Then the MVP, Josh Allen, all the way down there at 70. And
just like I said.
Yeah, remember this name? Carson Wentz, 88 overall. Matt Ryan, 72. And then Tom Brady at 83. Those are the top 10 guys. So the way I kind of broken this down is I think you're thrilled if your quarterback gets 24 plus points per game. So that's about 3 passing touchdowns, 300 yards. You're happy if your QB gets between 18 and 24 points. So that's about 2 to 3 touchdowns and 200 yards. And I feel like you don't feel great if your quarterback gets below 18 points. That's kind of like a bust-ish kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a quarterback that gets under 18 points, you're more likely than not going to lose that week.
Yeah. So we got to start off with the number one guy of the 2020 season, voted the fantasy MVP, Josh Allen.
Like I said, drafted him in 2 leagues, and the man came out and he did what he was expected in a high-powered Bills offense.
So he had 405 points on the year, averaged about 25 points per game, played all season, had 9 games of 24 plus points, 3 games of 18 to 24, and only 4 games under 18. I feel like a lot of Josh Allen is the consistency with the offense. There's not a lot of turnover from the previous year. And the addition of Stephon Diggs just gave him an awesome target for the entire season. And then he got a lot of points with his legs. He had 8 rushing touchdowns because the Bills just didn't have a running back game. So how do you feel about Josh Allen right now?
Josh Allen's on top of the moon. He's, I don't even know how tall he is, but he's got to be like 6'5", easily over 230 at least. So he's like a full-fledged running back, but at the same time can sling the ball farther than probably anyone in the league. And like you said, Stephon Diggs coming in, made a big impact in the offense, and Cole Beasley, one of the better slot receivers out there. And then you also got like Dawson Knox. Again, they don't have a run game, so it's like anytime they're within 10 yards, it was either a passing touchdown for Josh Allen or a rushing touchdown for Josh Allen. If they stayed on top of the AFC like they did all season pretty much, then Josh Allen was just destined to be a great fantasy quarterback.
Is he your guy next year, Brian?
Of course he is.
Yeah.
If he falls to me, I'm going to take him again.
It's a smart move to take him.
Oh, yeah.
Moving on to number 2, another guy who is projected to be like one of those fantasy home runs if you got him. Kyler Murray. 390 points on the season, averaged about 24 points per game. Played a full season, but there were some of those games where he's playing through a significant injury. 9 games over 24 points, 3 games so between 18 to 24, and then 4 games under 18. He just had a high-powered offense. They added one of the best pass catchers in the league in DeAndre Hopkins. And the dude had 11 touchdowns with his legs. Do you see this continuing at all for Kyler Murray?
I see it continuing. He was a beast when healthy, so people kind of downgrade him a little bit because he did get hurt for that little patch of the season, and everyone's like, "Oh, is Kyler Murray still Kyler Murray?" Like, I don't know. And then at the end of the season, he just turned it right back on. So I'd feel confident in drafting him again as a top 5 QB, maybe even top 3 QB, but that's going to be your decision if you can trust him to, stay healthy for the next season and on.
Yeah, I think it'd be like one of those things you have to pay attention to, like the tea leaves with off season to see if they're going to change the offense at all to try to get him to run less because he got hurt running the ball, and to see like what happens with the meshing of the offense. Do they stay with Kenny and Drake? Do they move on? Do they go more pass happy, or do they go more run heavy to protect Kyler? those are just a few factors I feel like you would have to consider revolving around his game.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard rumors that they might keep Kenyon Drake, but even if they don't, they'll have Chase Edmonds, and Chase Edmonds is a dual threat running back that can run the ball and catch the ball. So it really just depends if they want to keep Kyler Murray healthy for the next 5-6 years and try to lock him down on a contract. But if he keeps running the ball at this pace, nothing could. I mean, anything could happen. He could probably get hurt. And, first week of the season, we wouldn't know.
Okay. A guy who won the actual NFL MVP had an outrageous year. Can you guess who it is?
It is Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. 387 points on the year, averaged 24 points per game, played the full season, had 10 games over 24 points, 5 games between 18 and 24, and only 1 game in the entire season under 18 points. So he had an outrageous touchdown percentage, throwing about a touchdown on 9% of his passes, because he has a monster right outside named Davante Adams that just literally could catch any single ball that was thrown to him. And Rodgers had a 48-5 touchdown interception ratio on the year.
Aaron Rodgers has always been good. He's just discredited because he never wins in the playoffs. So He's always had it in him. And Davante Adams just being a monster definitely just helps because all he has to do is lob the ball up and he's probably going to come down with it. The rest of the offense isn't that great, though. I mean, they got Aaron Jones and a good run game. Aaron Jones probably is going to be gone this year. But going forward, I don't know if Rodgers is going to be the MVP that he was this year, considering that they have to make up for some cap on the team. But he'll still be solid enough to be, top 10 still at starting fantasy quarterback. But I just don't think he'll put up the same numbers as he did this year.
All right, I'm going to ask you about that in a few minutes later down the road because I don't know. Because I think he's going to have a touchdown regression coming because what he did was outrageous this year.
He has to. And I mean, if Davante Adams wants to put up 16 touchdowns again, then sure. But I don't think they'll have the weapons, and the offensive line will, have to regress back a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I just think the storyline for Aaron Rodgers' career is that he's good enough to get them to the NFC Championship, but then the team around him fails.
It's the defense. Honestly, the defense just failed. But then again, the Bucs did beat them, and they only scored, 9 points or something like that. So it's kind of a little bit on the offensive side, too.
It's fair. I think they'll go down in history trying to figure out why they went with a field goal at the end of the game instead of trying to score that touchdown on 4th down.
Bad coaching.
Yeah.
Patriots would never do that.
Speaking of a guy who basically got railed in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes. Monster season, 380 points, averaged 25 points per game. Played 15 games, sat the last week because they had clinched the 1 seed. So he had 7 games over 24 points, 7 games between 18 and 24, and then only 1 game under 18 points. High-powered offense, and a career year for Travis Kelce will do that for the quarterback. Madden-style offense, basically their style is, we'll see how fast you can cover because we're just going to lob the ball deep. Do you think he drops in drafts now from staying in that 3rd round to 5th round at this point?
No. I think you got to take Patrick Mahomes no matter what. The skill is always going to be there. He's probably going to win maybe 5-6 Super Bowls by the time he retires, and he's going to be a beast in fantasy football for the next 10 years. He's going to be like what Rodgers is in fantasy football, who's been a monster since he came to the league. And Mahomes is just going to probably do that, and if not better, if they can keep Kelce, Hill, sign all these guys. But as soon as those guys start leaving and, they don't have the weapons, then maybe you'll start asking those questions. But for now, you definitely draft him.
And I think with the cap hit, I feel like the Chiefs would probably let their defensive guys go. And I think with how bad their offensive line is, they're only going to get more pass happy next year, which is going to be outrageous for their fantasy players.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, this guy right now, he wants out of his team, Brian. Deshaun Watson at number 5.
Deshaun Watson's good. He just needs to get put on a good team. If I've heard, I've heard the 49ers said no, but now it's seeming more and more likely that it's either going to be the Patriots, maybe, but I think it's the Panthers that are kind of like the landing spot right now.
Yeah, I think they're pushing the hardest. He could be on the Panthers by the time this episode comes out, so you never know.
Exactly.
But this man finished with 376 points, averaged 23 points per game, played a full season starting with Bill O'Brien handicap to start the season. 8 games over 24, 5 games between 18 to 24, and only 3 games under 18. He reminded me of Russell Wilson from a few years ago as the one-man band this year, where he just had no support and just had to do everything for his team, which is probably why he wants out of Houston at this point.
I mean, Houston's just a train wreck to start with. Bill O'Brien came in, they won nothing, they did nothing within their time there. Watson still produced every time, But, they had Hopkins, got rid of Hopkins, J.J. Watt, gone, Sean Watson, gone. It's a recurring trend. The organization is just going down. They could be worse than the Jets in a couple of years. We don't know.
Honestly, I feel like the Texans will, if they lose to Sean Watson, they will be the worst team in the NFL next year.
Yeah, probably. It'll probably be them and me. I don't know. The Jets could make some noise with Saleh as a coach there, but we'll see, how they draft and if they get Zach Wilson, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. So speaking of my guy, Russell Wilson.
Do you want 30 points a game in 1 week and then 8 points in the next? Because that's your guy.
It is. So he's my NFL quarterback. I have never taken Russell Wilson in fantasy because of that reason. So he finished the year with 372 points, averaged 23 points per game, but it's misleading. He played the full season. He had 7 games over 24 points. And most of those 7 games, 5 of them came in the first 5 weeks, and then 2 of them were scattered throughout the remaining of the season. 5 games between 18 to 24, 4 games under 18. But I feel like those 4 games under 18 felt worse than it sounds.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also kind of would like to know the stat of how many fantasy points Russell Wilson scores in the fourth quarter, because that's the only time that he seems to come alive in football games.
Yeah.
But no, Russell Wilson's solid. I mean, if you need a guy to be able to run and throw the ball, Russell Wilson's a solid fantasy quarterback. I think he'll always be top 10 and a starter no matter where you take him. It's just the risk factor of, he's going to get you 8 points 1 week and you're probably going to have to, sacrifice that week and take the loss. But there's times where he gets like 35 points and you're like, okay, like this is the Russell Wilson I drafted and this is why, I drafted him in the first place.
Yeah. The thing that's always bothered me about Russell Wilson is that he has the potential to put up the same numbers, even bigger numbers than the other guys at the top, but the coaching staff, he has one bad game or they just don't game plan. So he's basically running for his life every play. And they're like, oh, we have to go back to the running game. Or it's just, if you just design better passing plays, he would still light up any defense.
Exactly. They try to focus too much on the run at times, and then it doesn't open up the passing game. And I think that's a big problem with the Seahawks because they wait till like the second half and they're like, okay, now let's just air it deep. Let's go to DK or let's go to Lockett. Like whoever has a hot hand today.
Yeah.
And then they try to like force feed it into place and like they have no structure, no game plan. If the Seahawks could get a good game plan, Russell Wilson will probably be a lot better than he was last year, but we'll see what happens in 2021.
It's like you said, if you're going to send DK deep, why isn't Tyler Lockett just doing like a 7-yard cross along the field? Like he's going to be open.
It's almost to the point where he just chooses one of the receivers before the play is even snapped and he just hucks it up and just prays for the best.
It's because he just doesn't have time to like do anything. By the time he gets to the second read, there's a lineman in his face.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about this guy for a sec, Brian, because he will never be drafted, but he will always be picked up in free agency because he is the king of free agent quarterbacks when you're going from week to week. Do you know who it is?
It's either Ryan Tannehill or Matthew Stafford.
It is Ryan Tannehill. This dude put up 350 this year, averaged 21.9 points per game. Very middle of the line when it comes to consistency. 6 games over 24 points. 5 games between 18 to 24, and then 5 games where he busted on you. He really just dominates the play action game. Big wide receivers that the defense can't double cover because they have to consider Derrick Henry running the ball. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the big things for Ryan Tannehill. And he's also really sneaky with his legs because he had 7 rushing touchdowns as well.
Tannehill's like good. I've always said that Tannehill was good when he was on the Dolphins, and then he had that injury that kind of just set everything back. He came back, was a little iffy, and then finally Tennessee, took a shot on him. And what they do, they've been in the playoffs, I think, every single time he's been the starting quarterback there.
Right, past 2 years.
Exactly. And I mean, it definitely helps that Derrick Henry's in the backfield because if you pressure the run and then you play action, all of a sudden you got A.J. Brown, you got Jonnu Smith, you got Corey Davis. It's like he's got the weapons there. He's good enough to make those plays. Like Tennessee is a good team. I wouldn't say Ryan Tannehill is like amazing, but at the same time, he's going to put up good enough numbers to be able to start.
He's like one of those quarterbacks. He's not like talented enough to be in the upper echelon of quarterbacks, but I think he's one of the best of the next tier down. Like he's a lot better than your average game manager.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get you like 20 points. He's never going to get you like below 15. He'll never get like above 30, but like he'll stick in like the 20 to like 23 range consistently. And you kind of need that sometimes. Like say your quarterback goes down to injury. You had Dak Prescott last year.
Yeah.
You pick up Ryan Tannehill and he fills that spot in perfectly.
So it's a great season. We got to talk about, you can talk about this guy because I hate talking about him, but your man for your entire life comes in at number 8, Tom Brady. 350 points, averaged 21.8 points per game, played the full season, basically had the same kind of stat line as Ryan Tannehill when it came to fantasy points. 5 games over 24, 5 games between 18 to 24, and then 6 games where Tom Brady basically busted on you.
I mean, there's nothing to say about Tom Brady. Tom Brady's got Mike Evans. He's got Chris Godwin. He's got Antonio Brown. He's got Rob Gronkowski. I'll throw Cameron Brate in there, too. Like, he's got all the weapons in the world.
Yo, you can't forget about the few weeks he had O.J. Howard, too.
O.J. Howard, too. So he's got all the weapons in the world. Best quarterback, best player, best athlete out of any sport ever. 7 championships. We can post that now because he won it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to be said about it. If you're going to take Tom Brady next year, I mean, the man's going to be, 44 years old? Like, it's going to be an old guy out there. But I still think that he throws for 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and goes on to win the Super Bowl again. Like, you're probably going to draft Tom Brady lower end, probably like back in like 8, 9, 10, 11, wherever that is, because you want those guys who can run the ball too. But at the same time, if you need 20 to 28 points, Tom Brady's going to get you that every single week.
Tom Brady is the fantasy guy. He'll have those games where he throws for 5 touchdowns, or he'll just bust and get you like 1 and a few interceptions. Because he has those games every now and then. But I feel like the problem is he's very deceiving in fantasy because you're like, there's no way Tom Brady's going to continue the success year in, again and again and again. And here he is, number 8 for fantasy quarterbacks in 2020.
Yeah, I think you need to draft like a backup for Tom Brady too. I seen that, like all the leagues I was in, everyone who had Tom Brady always had a backup ready to go, whether it was like Cam Newton or like someone like random Matthew Stafford, just in case like he plays like a really good defense, because he does have those games where he does have like 4 picks. It's like, oh, ESPN, did Tom Brady? Is this the collapse of Tom Brady? It's like, no, he just goes on to win the Super Bowl again. Yeah. So it's like a risk-reward type thing.
All right, number 9. Guy who got into the spotlight because the starter went down in week 1 due to a non-contact injury. And this injury technically had some contact to it, but it was off the field. His doctor stabbed him in the chest, forcing this guy into the lineup. Do you know who it is?
Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert.
Yep. Justin Herbert, the Big Herb, finished with 342 points, averaged about 22.8 points per game, played in 15 games, basically went 5, 5, and 5. 5 games over 24, 5 games right in between, and then 5 bust games. It was one of those things where he had great offensive pieces, and as a rookie, he was just not afraid to sling the ball. And they were just always playing from behind, so he just always had to put up yards and points no matter what.
I was going to make that point, too. It's like, you got to look at fantasy sometimes. It's not about like, all right, the best team. Like Chiefs, clearly you got the, Tyreek Hill is always going to get production. Kelsey's always going to get production. But then you got to look at the Falcons. Like Calvin Ridley had a monster season. Why? Because they're always playing from behind. Same thing with the Chargers. Like Chargers have a high-powered offense, have all the weapons in the world. But Justin Herbert's like always going to produce because he can run. He can sling the ball. He's got Austin Eckler to throw out of it in the backfield. And they just got a new coach this year, too. So I would definitely draft Justin Herbert as my quarterback next year. He's on my list. I just don't know if you take him before some of these top 5 quarterbacks, but he's like right there after that.
Right. Rounding it off in number 10, the guy everyone wanted to pick number 1 overall, Lamar Jackson. Hard year if you took Lamar Jackson in the second round. 340 points, averaged 22.7 points per game. Played 15 games, 7 games over 24, 3 games between 18 to 24, and 5 bust games. He stayed relevant with his legs, 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, but that's 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns and only getting 340 points as a quarterback. Like, that's a problem. You should have a lot more than that if you're getting 1K rushing yards.
I do have to admit that they did have a tough schedule to start the season, which kind of, had a little bit of a damper on Lamar Jackson's production in the beginning of the season. And then towards the end of the season, he lit it up. He started having like 30-point games. Marquise Brown started turning it up. Mark Andrews started turning it up. So I don't know if it was because of the defense or Lamar Jackson just can't throw the ball, but I would probably, wait on him a little bit. He does have a chance to get hurt because he runs so much. But it's definitely a gamble if you want to take him. I mean, it's definitely not a bad pick, but then again, you have to, that risk. Will he throw more interceptions than he does touchdowns, and he'll just run the ball the whole time? So, something you got to choose.
Right. Now to get in some ifs, ands, or buts about the 2020 season, Brian. So the first one is, if Dak Prescott did not get hurt, Dak Prescott was on pace for one of those monster fantasy seasons ever before his injury. If his pace kept up through the first 4 games he fully played, he would have ended with 500 fantasy points, averaging 31.3 points per game, 95 more points than Josh Allen on the year.
Yeah, okay. Dak Prescott would have been good. He would have been top 5 probably. I don't know if he would have been better than Josh Allen. But again, he's the same thing. He had all the weapons in the world. Zeke, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb.
Also, with playing with one of the worst defenses in the NFL, forced him to always be playing from behind.
And who they play? They made that ridiculous comeback against the Falcons. Yeah. See, they have all the talent in the world, but they're just the worst. They're the 8-8 team that you just don't want to play against at the same time. But the Cowboys are just a mess overall. I think Dak Prescott is good. I just don't know if they don't sign him, if that's going to play into effect in how he plays next season. Because if he gets franchise tagged again, he's going to be pissed off.
Yeah.
The Cowboys could be terrible next year. You never know. The Redskins could be the best team in that division. The Giants could be the best team. So it really just depends how the Cowboys play out. But I think they have the weapons for Dak Prescott to be good.
They definitely do. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup. CeeDee Lamb finished as a top 20 receiver this year as the third option on that team.
He's actually ranked as one of the highest guys in dynasty drafts. I know we don't do dynasty drafts, but if you do a dynasty draft out there, he's graded as one of the higher ones. Him and Jonathan Taylor. Ugh.
Yeah. I think if they keep Dak in Dallas, and then eventually CeeDee Lamb will become the number 1 once Amari Cooper's gone.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know how long Amari Cooper has on his contract, but CD will definitely take over that number 1 role.
Yeah. Here's another fun if, Brian. If he was the full year starter, Ryan Fitzpatrick could have been a top 10 quarterback this year. The 7 games he was the full starter, he was averaging 21.3 points per game.
I'm all about the Fitzmagic.
You can't hate on Fitzmagic at this point in his career.
He's got to start on some team, at least prove himself. He's proven himself year after year. He's the ultimate backup in the NFL. And when he plays, he just throws ridiculous balls that somehow coming down as miracle touchdowns. But he puts up the numbers when he plays. I just don't know why teams don't give him a chance.
I think it's because teams know that he's not afraid to sling it. Because in his best seasons, he has jeopardized his games with some of those throws.
That's true. Yeah, he's definitely risky, and he definitely doesn't play smart, but he makes the throws, and he's proven himself.
At this point, I don't feel like he doesn't care if he wins. He just wants to have fun, and I think that's why his team always does well when he's playing, because the rest of the players see this man just throwing his body on the line at 38, 39 years of age at this point, and then the team just rallies around that.
Yeah, I feel bad for Dolphins fans because I just don't think Tua just had a tough season last year, and if they started Fitzmagic, you never know, they could have made a little bit of noise in the playoffs. Probably not, but a little bit more competitive than Tua in the lineup.
They went neck and neck with the Chiefs in that one game they played against, and that was led by Tua, but at the same time, it's just
they had a top 5 defense. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right. This is going to gas up your team a little bit, Brian, but I believe if the Pats had better weapons, Cam Newton could have had a much better fantasy season. He finished as the quarterback 16, throwing only 8 touchdowns.
They just designed him to not throw the ball. Not only can he not throw the ball, but they just designed it so he doesn't throw the ball because all he does is run.
12 rushing touchdowns would do that.
And we have so many running backs in the backfield that we just run these secret plays with James White, Rex Burkhead, Damian Harris, Sony Michel came back from injury. I think Cam Newton, if he comes back to the Pats, it's going to be a repeat of what happened last year. I think it's in their best interest to move on from Cam Newton, but if he does come back, hopefully, they develop him to be a better passer. And if not, then we'll see, but I probably won't be drafting Cam Newton in any fantasy leagues.
All right, Brian, trying to project the top 10 quarterbacks of 2021. Right now, here's how the list goes. Patrick Mahomes, because, of course, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and then Ryan Tannehill rounds it out at 10.
Yeah, I agree with most of those. I think Mahomes, Allen, and Murray are the top 3 dogs indefinitely. You could honestly choose them in any order.
Right.
You're still going to get the same production. I don't know why Justin Herbert's so low at 9. I would bump him up to the 5-6 range because I would take him over probably Dak. I'd probably take him over Rodgers. Maybe Wilson too, depending on how I feel. I mean, people forget, Justin Herbert was a monster.
Yeah.
And they're only going to get better too with a new coach.
So I just feel like also on this list, if Deshaun Watson, like if he doesn't get traded, like let's say the season starts and he's still in Houston, there's no way I'm drafting him at 5 overall for quarterbacks.
No shot. And especially because Will Fuller might be gone next season. Will Fuller just had a career year, took steroids.
Yeah.
And then if he's gone, who do you got? You got Brandon Cooks and Kiki Cutie.
And that's it.
That's it.
And then what if your quarterback you draft that high doesn't play?
Exactly. Like I wouldn't trust Deshaun Watson. If he goes to the Panthers, then they got like DJ Moore. They got Robbie Anderson, and they got a whole other weapon with Christian McCaffrey catching 9 balls a game.
Okay, but what if they have to trade away Christian McCaffrey to get Deshaun Watson?
Well, that would just be ridiculous. I don't know why they would ever even do that. But if they want to do that, sure. That would just be an awful decision on the organization because I'd rather start, Teddy Bridgewater now instead of trading for Deshaun Watson.
All right, would you rather Justin Herbert at 9 or Aaron Rodgers at 7?
I would take Herbert over Rodgers, 100%. I don't know. I do think the Packers are going to be worse this year, considering that they do have to get rid of a lot of people, and then Adams will probably regress just like a little bit, but they don't have really like that high-powered offense like other than Adams. Jones going to leave. They're going to have Dillon in the backfield. I would just rather trust Herbert, who can throw the ball off to Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, like way more, production in that offense. So I trust them more.
Okay. Now let's talk about some of those late round quarterbacks. I feel like you should pay attention to if you're going to go the late round quarterback style. Matthew Stafford with this new home in the Rams, kind of projected to be quarterback 13. Do you think he can break the top 10?
I mean, Matthew Stafford every year has games where he throws for like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. You just got to get lucky enough to choose that game that he does that. But I think that the Rams are really good, and they got a good run game, so he'll probably do better than Jared Goff there. I just don't know how much better, but I would take a gamble on him. If you already have a quarterback and you want to go with a 2 quarterback system, like you just have like Tom Brady or something like that, like Stafford would be someone you would choose.
Okay, what about with the recent trade news, Carson Wentz going to the Colts? This guy has been basically all over the news as being the secret prize of the late round quarterbacks, but Jalen Hurts as the lead guy for the Eagles. Do you see him basically being the Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson from the previous years, being that late round guy that kind of helps you out? You're nodding your head no. So
no. As a Patriots fan, rooting for anyone that came from the Eagles is tough to say.
Yeah.
But I think that Carson Wentz is good. I mean, he almost won an MVP and then got hurt. I think the difference with him is that their offensive line gave him no time to throw the ball. He always ducked and covered. But the thing about the Colts is that, 1, they have the most cap going into this season, so they're going to sign a ton of guys. 2, their offensive line is a million times better than the Eagles' offense. So if you can give him 3, 4, 5 seconds, even 5 seconds in the pocket, Carson Wentz is going to do damage. And they got Pittman. They got a whole other young group of guys. They got Jonathan Taylor. They got Jonathan Taylor out there. So I think he'll do pretty well. I don't know if he's going to be like an amazing fantasy stud, but it's someone you can, trust in like the later rounds.
All right. Later rounds, because I bet they're going to get drafted right next to each other. Would you rather Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz as your fantasy quarterback?
Probably Jalen Hurts, honestly, just for the running factor. He already proved himself. I mean, he puts up 20 to like 35 points. Like, I think that Jalen Hurts will probably have a pretty good season next year. He might suffer for some turnovers because, the Eagles got to lose games. Everyone knows the Eagles have to lose, but I would probably choose Jalen Hurts.
What about another guy that just kind of caught fire in a bottle last season when the 4 games he played in, Taysom Hill on the Saints?
I don't even know if Taysom Hill's going to start on the Saints.
Yeah. At this point, it's up in the air, but if Taysom Hill starts the year as the Saints starter, do you want him as your quarterback in fantasy?
No. I mean, I'll let someone else choose Taysom Hill as their quarterback, but I just don't trust that man.
What about Joe Burrow?
Joe Burrow, yes, 100%. I think Joe Burrow is actually going to be really good next year. If you wait till like the late rounds to draft a quarterback, so you want to like go heavy on receivers or you go heavy on running backs and you're struggling to find a quarterback, I think Joe Burrow is going to be like a 25 consistently every week.
Do you think so? 25 consistently every week, that's a top 5 quarterback, Ryan.
I think he has potential to be a top 5 quarterback. I do.
What do you think his floor is? Do you think his floor is like 15, or do you think it could be below 15?
No, I think his floor is like 18 a game.
Okay.
18 to 25. I think he consistently can put up 25 next year. That's because they're playing from behind. He throws for 400 yards. He's got the weapons.
Yeah.
He's got Higgins. Or who else?
Higgins, Boyd.
But there's got a lot of weapons over there. He already proved himself before he got injured. Give him a full season, and I bet you he does really well.
Right. We can't really speculate what they're going to do. Not all the time do rookie quarterbacks really have much worth being drafted in fantasy, but Trevor Lawrence on the Jags, or if Zach Wilson ends up somewhere, do you consider like the last round in the draft like throwing them on your bench, or do you wait for them to prove themselves and then try to scoop them out of free agency?
No, you have to draft both those guys. You 100% those guys will be drafted in every single league, whether it's the 14th, 15th, 13th round. They'll probably start going. I bet you Trevor Lawrence probably ranked a little bit higher than Zach Wilson. But if you want a sleeper pick, take Zach Wilson with your 14th or 15th pick. Don't get a defense or whatever. Take someone that's actually valuable, and it could turn out to be a 30-point player, and you don't even know.
Right. It's like those late round gems that you can smash on. That means you got a nice trade piece if you go quarterback and then have this awesome quarterback sitting on your roster. So let's say Zach Wilson becomes a monster, but you don't know. Would you rather trade away the quarterback you drafted or trade away Zach Wilson?
That is this if you don't know going into the season and you have to trade one of them, or if Zach Wilson's a beast?
I'm saying let's say it's a week 2. Zach Wilson has had 2 promising games, playing basically around the same level as the guy you drafted earlier is. Which one would you trade? Would you roll with the unknown of Zach Wilson, or would you actually stick with the starter?
I would have to see more than 2 weeks, but I would probably trust Zach Wilson. If he goes off and he drops 35 in 2 straight games, I would probably trust him the rest of the way.
All right. Final remarks for this episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. It helps grow the podcast. It's never too early to start working towards the next year. Just pay attention to the news. We're getting into draft season, trade season, free agency. It's going to be interesting to see how different players kind of just play out and where they land. So just follow the news every few weeks. And as always, I don't know how to end this. I have not figured out an ending yet.
Whatever, just let it roll, and we'll be on the next episode.
Exactly. I always feel like we do cheers, but we literally just have water today.